I am joining you guys from sunny Arizona currently to talk about one of my favorite subjects, which is technology. So thank you for taking the time to watch this, and hopefully I can answer some questions for you guys and share some of the things that we've done so you can decide if that works for you in your practice. So a little bit of my background. I graduated dental school in 2006 from OHSU, which is Oregon Health Science University. When I graduated in 2006, turns out the most advanced digital aspect of technology that we had was that we had digital x-rays. We didn't grow up in the CEREC world. There wasn't really a lot available at the time. We heard whispers of it. But it wasn't until I became an associate for a few years with an incredible doc outside of my hometown. And he was kind of known as a cowboy. He did these crazy things, like he was a GP who placed implants, and he had this CAD/CAM CEREC technology. I was a little nervous coming into the practice because I just didn't know a lot about it. But as a young doctor and meeting all the patients and really seeing what digital technology could do for the practice, for the patients, doing a lot of same-day services, it opened my eyes. And so in 2009, great year to open a practice, took the big leap of faith and did a startup practice in Vancouver, Washington. So I'm about 15 minutes outside of Portland, Oregon, in the Pacific Northwest. Beautiful area, a town of about 175,000 people with a lot of dentists in our area as well. And so in my private practice, one thing I'm always looking for is how am I going to set my practice apart? How am I going to continue growth, continue taking care of my patients in the best way possible, and just keep loving what I do. And so in private practice, I am also a faculty down at Pathway, which is where I'm at today. So most of the time I spend half of my week in Washington seeing patients, and then the other half of my week down here at Pathway. And the thing that I love about that, we have a 32 op teaching facility here where we do live patient education. So we take a lot of digital technology, and whether it's surgery or doing restorations, we're utilizing that. And in our classes, when we do live patient education, we're giving back to those patients who can't afford a lot of this treatment otherwise, and just trying to take care of a population while kind of pushing the envelope in technology. So I get to prove what I do in my private practice, also in a teaching setting. So it's not just things that I can do with my own hands. And I think that's really important, not also because I'm this big, fantastic teacher, but just because we get to see it with everybody's hands, because we all know we all prep a little different or do things slightly different. So to prove those out is fun. Fun side hobby is that we love creating dental spoofs in my private practice. And then a fun new adventure outside of dentistry is my fiance and I own a winery, which is proudly called Titanium because we love implants so much. My team will tell you the only thing that is constant is change. And I think that's a really important message today in the digital arena of dentistry, because there are things coming out every single day, and it's so exciting to see what's happening. So let's get to it. So in my private practice, there are 3 doctors. We have 6 hygienists. We have a pretty big PPO practice. We're kind of moving and grooving. I was so excited to have other dentists joining me. I have 2, they're now partners. And what I love about it is that we get to spread the hygiene exams. We're a little timid around our hygienists because they're all CrossFitters, and you can see this is kind of what happens with us. That's Dr. Lena being pulled out of the office to do the hygiene exams, because no matter what, one of us always is behind the times for a hygienist. I'm sure a lot of you can relate to that. But we like to have a lot of fun. I mentioned that I'm at private practice 3 days a week, and then I come down and teach. And of course, giving up some of that time, I was so nervous because I was sure that my practice could not run without me. And so I was that annoying doctor, and I would just text all the time and say, like, is everything okay? Is everything okay? So we started this TikTok Thursday so that they would show me that things are okay without me having to harass them. So this is my team.
Hey, oh, banana. Huh? Ba 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 banana. Ba 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 banana. Oh, ba 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 banana.
Always showing the maturity. So I started getting these really funny ones on Thursdays, which was great. It always made me chuckle, and then I'd still, always make sure that the house wasn't on fire while I was gone. But having a big practice, working with a lot of women, a lot of team members, we're always trying to pay attention to culture. And some of that culture is developed because we bring in fun things to do and technology, but we do take it serious when there's attitude.
Oh, Lord have mercy. Today drained me.
No team members were injured. Of course, this is all just in fun, but we like to have a good time. When I started my practice, I started with 3 ops. I did start with CEREC and I started with CBCT, and I wanted to grow my practice. And then now today we have, again, 3 doctors, 10 ops, and we like to have a lot of fun in what we're doing. So how did we break down some of those barriers and get some of that growth, especially starting out in the 2008, 2009 era, not unlike going through the COVID period? One of the things is we do accept PPOs. Some of that was marketing. Some of that was the fact when I started my practice is when Delta really cut their fees. And so most other dentists were going out of network. But in my area, most of the big industries, so we have like Nike and Intel and our Vancouver school district, they all had PPO only insurance programs. And so it was a way to capture those patients, but I needed to do it also systematically and keep those patients happy and still be able to make money, right? So that the practice could keep going. So we are insurance driven. I am huge on creating systems. I think that's the only way, especially as digital technology is evolving, all the things we're doing in dentistry just keeps changing so fast. The way that we keep up with that and keep our team up with that, especially with turnover, is to create those systems. And any system that you're going to see today, I am always happy to share. You'll find that I'm definitely a blank slate on that. I want to utilize my team to the fullest. I think it's really important. I don't want my team members just to show up because it's a job. And so I want to speak to the things that they want to do, whether that could be staining and glazing and doing some artwork, or it could be making sure that patient has the most exceptional patient care they've ever experienced, or maybe it's geeking out over printing. I just want to utilize my team to the fullest so that they have fun when they come to work. And then I want to trust my technology. As my career has evolved in the last, 18 years, technology sometimes was bought and kind of shoved in a corner, and it's expensive. And so we don't want that to happen. You want to trust it. You want to know how to handle anything that may come up, because technology typically is still computers at the end of the day. And then one of the reasons how we've really developed our practice is creating this culture of single visit dentistry. And that's where the shift, I think, is really happening very quickly today, and it's becoming more accessible for everybody today. So whether this is doing your crowns in a single visit or doing implants, or maybe even cutting down your denture appointments, like that's where technology is taking us. And it allows us to value our patients' time, but also value our time as our costs are rising so much. So how do we do that? So these are all the fun toys that we have in our office. Whether it's CBCT, we do clear aligners, printing, CEREC machines, or chairside milling. It doesn't have to be just CEREC today. And these are the things that allow my team to have fun when they're coming into work. It allows us to be very efficient with our time, trusting our technology, and just loving dentistry. So what is your passion in dentistry? And some of how we're going to choose what we're going to do next is knowing like what makes you thrive. So is that restorative? Is it crown and bridge? Is it removable? Is it ortho, sleep dentistry, TMJ, implants, whether it's single implants or full arch implants? Is it aesthetics? I feel very unique, and maybe not unique, but very grateful in my practice that for me personally, what drives me is I love the aesthetic side, more so in just delivering a smile to patients who just didn't think they would be able to achieve that. One of my partners, she loves surgery, like give her surgery any day, and that's her happy place. And my other partner just absolutely loves the restorative side. She knows everything about every single patient's cousin's aunt's uncle in our practice. And so that's how she gets her fulfillment. And we don't have to all love the same things, but we can definitely use our technology to that best advantage of what you like in dentistry. The cool part about digital dentistry and digital technology is it has the exact same workflow. Doesn't matter if we're milling or we're printing or whatever we're going to create, it has the same workflow. We just have to make decisions within that workflow of what fits for us in our practice and know that things can change that whole time. So for our workflow, the first thing that we have to do is scan, whether that is scanning with an iOS, so a camera that's giving us the most important file is that STL file from a scanner, and then sometimes combining that with a CBCT. So in the combination, that would be things like surgical guides. Now there's denture workflows that combines that CBCT. Whereas scanning otherwise could just be just with the actual scanner could just go into doing our chairside restorations or night guards, things like that. But what we're looking for, first of all, is that STL file for the scan for the iOS scanner. And then for the CBCT, we're looking for a DICOM file. So first we're going to scan. The second thing we need to do is we need to design. Computer programs are coming out day in and day out, so we can do that chair side, whether we bring in a CEREC, whether we bring in programs like ExoCAD, or there's a lot of AI being developed right now. So we can upload those files that we got from our scanning, and we can have AI create things for us, which is pretty remarkable, and we can do it quickly, and it's a lot more affordable. And if you don't want to do AI and you don't want to do it yourself, a lot of times we can partner with our labs today. They're also making that shift in digital dentistry. Step number 3 is then manufacturing. When I got into dentistry, manufacturing tended to be milling. And so whether that was chairside milling, so meaning a mill that I had in office, or that was milling that was done in a lab, today, also, we can add printing to the manufacturer. And same thing, we can bring those printers in-house. Pretty cool. That is becoming more and more affordable. Or a lot of times our lab partners are also printing, again, because it's not just affordable for us, it's a lot more affordable for them. So we scan, we design, we manufacture, and then the next step is processing. So a lot of times when we mill, to process that, we have to put it in an oven. So a lot of things are milled in a softer state just for speed and ease of use. And then they go into an oven to become stronger. Or sometimes it's adding those characterizations that make it a little bit more lifelike. In the manufacturing for printing, the process of that is going to be washing the print, whatever we're printing, and then putting it in a cure box. So we scan, we design, we manufacture, we process, and then we deliver. And we can deliver so many variety of things. So let's talk about scanning first. What's cool about scanning is, again, when I started, not a lot of people were scanning. It's expensive technology, and it just wasn't as readily available. There weren't so many options. But today, it's fun, at least teaching, when we ask everyone to raise their hands, most people have a scanner. Now, I'm showing a Prime Scan. It's one of my very first loves growing up in dentistry, but you don't have to have a Prime Scan today either. We also have laptop scanners that are great, that can be a lot more cost effective depending what you can do or what you're going to do in your practice. So we have Prime Scans in our office, and we're using those Prime Scans for anything we're going to do milling, but we're going to use our laptop scanners that don't hook up to our mill, but we're going to use those for our clear aligners and our surgical guides and things that we're not going to mill in-house, but maybe we're going to print instead. The biggest thing I see though with scanning is that we always want to scan with a purpose, and we want to do it very intentionally. And what I mean by that is it's so fun to scan, and being in the dental field, we're typically a little neurotic because we have all these little details that we want to capture. And sometimes we spend so much time scanning in trying to capture those details, but are those details really important? So what I mean by scanning with a purpose is if I'm doing a single unit restoration, so let's say I'm scanning for a crown or implant crown on number 30, the information that I need is really just in that quadrant. I always scan in a pattern. So I'm going to do the occlusal surface first because I want to capture the most amount of data as possible. And then I'm going to do a quick swipe to the buccal, a quick swipe to the lingual, and then go back and see, do I have my contacts available? Now, do I care if I get the lingual of 24-25? No, I don't. But do my team members care because they want to have a good scan? Yeah, they might. So they might go back and scan, scan, scan. And I get asked all the time, oh, I couldn't get the, distal of 31. Is that important if I'm doing a crown on 30? No, it's not. Now, if I'm scanning for clear aligners, then scanning with a purpose is a little bit more intentional, meaning I do need to capture all that data because our clear aligners are capturing our embrasure spaces, and that's how they make teeth move. Right? So then I do need to be a little bit pickier, but I also don't want to just keep scanning in areas, because then I'm going to get my data file so big that you'll actually get less clarity. So if you ever are scanning and you're doing your own restoration and you look at the margins and they're blurry, chances are really high that you overscanned. And same thing, even if you're scanning full arch, if you get these little blips that won't go away, most scanners have AI that will cut things out, but every once in a while the scanner gets a little too smart, or we just fill it with too much data and it gets pixelated. So some of that feels very obvious to us, but do we share that with our team members? Why are we scanning? If we're scanning for a surgical guide, does it have to be perfect for a full arch? I would tell you no. If we're scanning for a night guard, okay, I need a little bit more information. So know why we're scanning and what's going to be important to that. And then we don't want to overscan. And that's where when you scan in a pattern, you're not going to overscan. And as I mentioned earlier, there are so many scanners out there on the market, and they're just becoming more and more affordable and easier to use, which I think is really exciting. When I started, it was a big deal to have an IO camera in my operatories. Even the intraoral cameras were so expensive, and now you can almost buy a scanner for as much as an intraoral camera. Some of it you can get pretty cheap on Amazon, but then does it make sense to just have more of them in your ops, or your hygienist doing scans for you so that you can talk to patients or be prepared for whatever that next step is? There's all sorts of opportunity that's coming with scanning, which is really exciting. So first step was scan, second is design. And again, as I mentioned earlier, there's a couple different options that we can do with design. So we can either have our own programs, whether that is exocad, CEREC InLab, 3Shape, or if you have a CEREC machine, there's the CEREC chairside software. And there's also a lot of free programs out there today through companies like True Abutment has their True Suite, where you can design some crowns, or Blue Sky Bio. It's amazing what is out there today, which a little Googling, or you can ask me like what I think would be the best option. I'm always happy to share depending on what your end goal is. But if you don't want to design, you don't have the time, then that's okay, because then we can either send that to a partner lab, or a lot of opportunities with AI is out there. And it, again, is just getting cheaper and cheaper. So we can either take that control ourselves if we like to, or if we have a team member that would want to do that, or we can farm that out. So we've scanned, we design, and now let's talk about manufacturing. What is the difference about, and how do you choose how to make what today? There's so much confusion in all the things that are being done, whether we want it chairside or sending to a lab. So in this picture, if you're unfamiliar, the picture on the left is a printer. So that's a 3D printer. This one happens to be Sprint Ray, so it's dental specific. And then in the middle, we have a milling machine, but this is a chairside milling machine, versus on the right, it is also a milling machine, but that may be one that you would find either at a really large practice, or sometimes implant only practices, or in a commercial lab. And the difference between the two mills is the chairside mill, you're typically milling out of a smaller block, meaning that we can mill it a lot faster because we have that pressure of having the patient chairside, because our intent is to deliver that same day. Versus with the mill on the right, those are often milled with a big puck, and you can mill multiple restorations, but you would normally mill overnight because it's going to take a lot longer to do. So if you have big group practices, or again, a lot of doctors who are doing full arch dentistry only, they're going to mill those full arch zirconias. That's the opportunity where you'd have some of those bigger mills. But again, becoming more readily available, which is pretty cool. So the difference between printing and milling, so printing is an additive manufacturing technique, meaning that you have this bottle of something. So normally it's a resin type. So in this picture, it's going to be a bottle of liquid that is, Onyx is a nanoceramic, a denture-based material. Now we have a lot of crown materials that are popping up, which are going to be a resin ceramic material, or you have PMMAs, surgical guide material. And it is in a vat of liquid, and then light cures layer by layer by layer. And now the cool part about it is it's a little less restrictive than milling because we're adding on to a base with a bigger platform. So how big you can print something is going to be determined by the size of the platform, which is on the top of that picture on the left. And you can also print multiple things at once, which is really cool. When I started in my printing journey, we didn't have a lot of options for printing, but now the resins are coming out on a daily basis. SprintRay just launched that you can start printing your clear aligners, your ortho aligners, the fact that we can print dentures, printing crowns. Like, what is that going to mean for our industry? And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. For processing, so we start with our print, so the printers are on the left, and then we want to wash that, normally with an isopropyl alcohol at 91 or 99%, and then we're going to put it in a cure box to harden. So we're manufacturing it by printing it, and then we're washing off all the excess resin, and then we're curing it. And most of the printing systems, again, there's lots of different options out there, are now self-contained where they have that process. The other cool part about that is it is determined by what you're putting in the printer, meaning the night guard is going to be processed differently than, say, a crown versus a denture. So way back when we started printing, we would used to have just these Tupperware full of alcohol, and you just throw it in there, and then you go do your hygiene exams, then you come back and you dry it off. And then we had these nail dryers to help cure it. And then you think like, okay, it's a surgical guide that we're putting in a patient's mouth, but like we didn't have any science behind how long we left it to cure or how long we washed it. And now that science is actually here, and it makes it really, really user-friendly. So user-friendly that I like to video my team, especially their first time doing it. And so this is what it looks like when it gets printed. So you lift the lid, the print is on the top. It was pretty cute. The first time we printed, they were digging around in the vat in the bottom. They didn't look up, but normally they're on that platform. And then this is the wash machine. So you literally just take that platform, you put it in the wash, and you push start, and that's it. And then to put it in the cure box, you just take it off the platform. In this case, we're just opening a drawer, that cure box, we're putting it in. We're telling the cure box what material it is. And then we push start. And this can be cured in about 2 minutes and 30 seconds. And all of the manufacturers are constantly on that race. How can we make things stable but more efficient so that we can continue to do things chairside? I'll tell you, in our practice, if we have a patient come in at the beginning of a hygiene appointment and they say, hey, I need a new night guard because mine's gross or whatever, we can deliver a new night guard in a single appointment within the hour of hygiene. It's really cool. We can print crowns in 8 minutes, depending if that's what we want to do. So the technology just keeps getting better and better. Milling, you're going to start with a puck or a block, and then you're using the burrs to take away. So it's a little bit more restrictive on the size of the mill and the size of the block that can be milled. So what are the most common things that are milled today? Crowns. The crowns that are milled today are still stronger than the ones that are printed. I don't think that's going to be forever. I truly do think that's changing today, which is really, it'll be exciting to see. But I will tell you, we have printing and milling in our office. We still do milling every single day because we can deliver that strength and beauty, whether it's Emax or zirconia. Milling dentures, there's a lot of back and forth between, is it better to mill a denture or to print a denture? Again, those printed dentures are getting better and better. If you look on PubMed as of now, they'll say milled dentures are stronger, and some will say they're more beautiful. Sometimes it depends on the lab technician, but if you already have that system, a milled denture is still an option. A great option. And then we used to mill our guides before we had the printers. They are a little messy when you mill them in-house. And so we've switched that over to printing just because it's a lot less cleanup. But those are some of the things that we can mill. It is important to pay attention to what you're milling and why. And one of the reasons I bring this up, so on the left, we are milling Emax, and with that, it's a glass ceramic, and we're using water to mill it. It also means there's a little bit of oil in that water, so when that comes out, we need to clean that off. Versus zirconia, we dry mill zirconia. So on the left, it's actually called grinding, not milling, but that's when we're doing a glass ceramic with water. With zirconia, we don't want to incorporate water in there. You can. They're not as pretty typically if you do that and then put it in the oven, but also in the oven, it's a longer drying cycle in the oven. So it makes that chair side time a little bit longer and a little bit harder to do. Versus today, you can mill a zirconia crown in less than 5 minutes, which is pretty crazy. Now, why would it be important for me to talk to my team members about this? If my team members are used to doing EMAX, maybe they came from a previous CEREC office where they only did EMAX and they're just on autopilot to wash crowns or to try in crowns, I need to take that step to tell them, okay, zirconia, we don't incorporate water. There's no washing. It's going to go into a hot oven and it's going to shrink because they look a lot bigger. So just remembering to have those conversations with our team members is why we want those details that are so important, especially with the amount of materials that are coming out to us available chairside and within our practice, if that's where we want to go with digital dentistry. Processing for milling normally means that we're going to remove what we call a sprue. And so there's an attachment to the block. And so we're going to use our hands to contour that slightly and then remove that sprue. And then again, we're going in an oven. Not all blocks go in an oven. Again, very important to tell our team members. They do make non-fire blocks that are about equal strength as our printed blocks. If they go in the oven, they will melt. So don't do that. We have definitely done that in our practice. It's not very fun. It's a lot of smoke. So we try to avoid that by having those conversations and being prepared. So we scan, we design, we manufacture, we process, and then it is time for delivery. So what can we deliver? So as far as printed, this is what's so exciting is I just feel like sky's the limit in what we can print today. We can print our crowns, whether they're normal crowns or implant crowns. We can print occlusal guards, surgical guides, our models, dentures, long-term hybrids. I do a lot with smile designs, and now we're getting into printing clear aligners instead of printing the models and doing suck downs. So this is just constantly changing. Versus milled, we mostly will mill, at least in my personal office chair side, our crowns. So whether that is, again, going back to a glass ceramic like EMAX or doing a zirconia, we do mill our implant crowns still. We kind of depend on the situation. And a lot of this will go back to some of this is new, and we have to decide as dentists what works for us, what works for our practice. If there's not 20, 30-year long-term studies, are we okay with that? What's your comfort zone? And then how are you going to stand behind either your practice or with the patients if things are changing? So a lot of things that's very personal decisions. If you ask 10 different dentists, I'm sure you'd get 10 different answers. It's got to feel good to you, but again, it's going to push everyone to think, okay, can this fit into my own practice and what am I going to do with it? I have a huge crush on Simon Sinek. When I started my practice is when I read Start With Your Why. And I love this quote. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And what you do simply proves what you believe. I was in an area where within 5 miles, I had 90 dentists in my competitive space, and I needed to stand out. I needed both my team, because I wanted to keep my team members, and my patients to understand why I did what I do for myself and for them to be able to retain them. So in the digital world, why do we do digital? Patient comfort is one huge thing, whether that is saving them time, or in this case, this is a patient who came in and she was pretty terrified of going to the dentist. She had a bad experience, and so she avoided it. It's pretty obvious that she needs a cleaning. And she had some broken down teeth. But what's really obvious is those tori down there. What was not obvious to her previous dentist or dental team was when they tried to take impressions or x-rays, they just kept cutting her tori. And it may sound silly to some, but she was just so traumatized to it, she just couldn't go back in. And so when she found out that we only scan and that we don't take impressions, it was a huge win. And that's how we got her. And she tells everyone she's a huge raging fan of ours, which is kind of fun. So patient comfort, again, we can save time by doing in-house services as well. Team comfort. In my case, this is doctor comfort. I did a training at an office and I walked by this, and every single patient that walked through that door also walked by this. And I just thought, I snapped a picture really quick, vowed never to say what office it was, but like this, If I was a patient and I knew I had to take a physical impression and I walked by this, like, do you want one of those trays in your mouth? And everyone knows like all that stone, it just smells so bad. And yeah, if you're an OCD dentist like myself, this hopefully makes you cringe a little bit. If you're doing digital dentistry and you don't have to pour up models because we can print them, no stone, no dust, we can keep things a little bit cleaner. And there's a lot of patient psychology and perception behind that as well. And then talking about storage, data storage versus lab storage. This is another office that I went in and I just kept asking, like, how do you find your cases that were coming back? They were a lab-driven practice and there were just cases everywhere. And they had a dedicated assistant who only managed cases. And you think, oh, like, this is tough to do versus now, so much of ours is data-driven. We can store it on the cloud. We can access it anytime. We don't have to save our models because it's affordable to print. So it takes up a lot less space, which is great. We can give the models back to our patients, which they think it's pretty cool to have a set of their teeth. And then, of course, where technology is going today is the ease of use and ROI. To think back when I started my practice and the cost of the CEREC and the CBCT, everyone thought I was crazy. You use those systems to make up for that with the ROI. And, you know, when I started, my crown fee was like $350 at a lab, and I could knock that down to $25 or $30 with the block. Now things are changing so much with outsourcing and materials that you don't necessarily get it from that single crown, but you can get it both in time savings and things like removable would be another example of that. And it's just fun. But how do we actually implement all of that stuff? Because a lot of times that's the big barrier is it's not necessarily the barrier as far as expense anymore, but how do we actually bring it into our practice? Because that can be intimidating for the whole team. And it's easy for the docs to get all excited, like, oh yeah, we're going to do this, and then tell the team figure it out. But having some discussions ahead of time can really, really help. So what does that look like? Making sure we're talking to our front office. Do we schedule procedures differently because of what we're going to implement, whether it's printing dentures or printing crowns or making night guards in-house? Do I treatment plan it different? Do I bill it differently? You want to have these conversations ahead of time. Hygiene, it's so important. They have such good relationships with our patients. They want to know why we're doing what we're doing and what's important to them. Do I maintain it differently at all? Is it going to show up on an x-ray differently at all? And then, of course, we have our assistants. What is the workflow? What is the equipment maintenance? Who has accountability? Am I supposed to do the design? Is my assistant supposed to do the design? No right or wrong answers in that, but having the discussion is going to be important. Same thing with doctors, that workflow and accountability. And then, of course, how do I learn about it and get CE about it? And then what about complications? It's tough when you change. Just change is always hard. And, you know, a lot of times you bring something in and it works great at the beginning, and then one little complication can happen. A computer can shut down. Then you think, oh, this is why I was never going to do this. You got to get past those hurdles, but also pre-think, ask the mentors around you, like, what was the biggest complication that happened from the beginning and how do I handle it in my practice? What if I change my schedule to deliver all my crowns in one visit, but then I can't? Are my patients going to be mad? How do I make it temporary? You want to go through kind of your worst case scenarios and whatever you're going to bring in-house, and then figure out how to plan for that ahead of time. And then just don't give up. Start with easy cases and do some reps. That's the biggest thing. You got to get over those hurdles. It's easy for us to do an MOD today, but it used to be really scary when we were in school. And all it is the reps, how many we do. So let's break that down just a little bit more, talking about front office. Again, going back to our why, we want to have that explanation and have that conversation ahead of time. The front office, they want to know, why are we changing what we do? What is the benefit for the patient, not just the practice? But you shouldn't be scared to share both. Is it a benefit because the practice is saving money? Is it a benefit because the patients are going to save money? Is it a benefit because it's a single visit instead of multiple visits? Or is it a new material that's out there? And what does that look like when that front office has that conversation? Because the patients are going to ask, what's different? And if you have that script it doesn't have to be verbatim, but if you have that prepared, then it's easy for them to adapt to that. Great news, Mrs. Jones, the practice is invested in the latest technology to better serve our patients by minimizing your time spent in the dental chair while still offering high quality of care. It doesn't have to be this scripted, but just have an answer, because that takes some of the fear away, because then everyone's prepared. And then how do you schedule it? And it's always important, I think, you add a little bit more buffer time in anything new. As much as I can say, yeah, it's easy to get a crown done in an hour. That's the one day that you'll have a burr break, or you have to restart a computer, and it just takes those few precious minutes. And then having that pressure of doing something chairside is just a little bit harder. So if you create that buffer, it will just help things go easier. But of course, the front office wants to know, how long do I put it in the schedule? And what do they tell the patients? So are you doing crown single visit? If you decide you want to get into removable dentistry and you break that down into 3 visits instead of 5 visits, night guards, can you turn them around in a single visit, or can you turn them around even next day or a couple days? Those again are the conversations we want to have with the whole team. And then do they collect money differently? Do they treatment plan it differently? If it's a printed crown versus a milled crown, is that a different CDT code? Turns out it will depend on the resin. Most of them today are resin ceramics, where you can bill them out under the 2740, but that's still an important thing to look up and have that conversation with the front, so that no one is either feeling like a fraud or having insurance fraud, anything like that. Do I collect money differently? If we're saving appointments and appointment times, maybe you don't do a half down and half after, but you have to collect it all at once. Is your team prepared to have that conversation, and do they feel comfortable doing that? Our hygiene, they want to know the same thing. Why are we changing what we do? What's the benefit for the patient? Do I clean it differently? Does it look different on a radiograph? Some of the printed crowns come up a little bit more translucent. Does that look different than a milled crown or a zirconia crown? How can I educate my patients about that? This is what a printed crown looks like. You know, if they're using a piezo, if it scratches it, it's pretty easy to polish it. If they use a glaze on the top of it to characterize it, but then use a heavy prophy paste, that can come off, and then it would be easy to reglaze, but it could intimidate team members if that happened and they think that they hurt something or broke something. And they do show up differently on radiographs. So again, just easing some of those fears. Versus, say, long-term hybrids. Let's say you want to get into full arch implant dentistry. How do they clean it? Having those discussions ahead of time. When I started in this arena, we were told you take them off once a year and then you clean all around and clean the implants. Now you leave them on and piezo around. Like it's all changing in that. So keeping up with the literature, but obviously having the conversations with the hygienist as well. For our assisting team, again, why are we changing what we're doing? What is the specific workflow? What are my responsibilities for the procedure? Who's doing the scanning, designing, and processing? Who does the maintenance on the machine? And how do I learn how to maintain the machine? How often do I do it? Where can I learn more? Luckily, everything's getting a lot more accessible today online. Anytime I'm adding a new service or a new technology into the practice, I love to create these worksheets. It does take a little bit of time, but I will sit down with my team members and actually go through line by line. So when I started placing implants in my practice, it wasn't something I did day in, day out, and I didn't want to forget anything, and neither did my team members. So by creating these checklists, we would put them on our 12 o'clock station. So behind the patient didn't need to see it, but we would physically check off each step until we didn't need it anymore, until it became so routine, it was just like doing a filling. Again, happy to share any of these checklists. You can copy them, you can keep them, but also creating your own, just that physicality of writing something down and working with your team members about it will just help ease some of that fear. And we do it for everything. We do it for our same day, our big cases, small cases, but again, happy to share that. When we're manufacturing zirconia, again, I mentioned that earlier, like, is there a difference in our processing of zirconia versus Emax? There absolutely is. One looks a lot bigger than the other. One you incorporate water, one you don't. In our office, I like to get my anterior ones ready because I like the artwork of it. It just makes me happy. Versus my assistants will get the posterior ones ready. But if they maybe touch one of the anterior ones, I might get excited about that. Like, or maybe they want to learn. Again, just having those discussions ahead of time is going to ease the fear of bringing anything in. This is a study that came out, Wally Renee is the first one that I saw that proposed it. And then we were talking about printed crowns versus milled crowns. And one of the reasons he switched a lot into printed crowns was because of this study that showed that implant crowns, if an implant crown was next to a natural tooth, there was a 50% open contact rate, meaning you would seat the implant crown, you would snap the floss, and then the patient would come back. Normally it's through hygiene, and then the hygiene, at least, I can sometimes get that like glare of, were you an idiot? Why'd you place this with open contacts? Because of course there's food getting packed in there. My hygienist would not call me an idiot, but they would wonder why I left an open contact. And it definitely does happen, especially if you do a high volume, you'll see it. And it's frustrating because you have an implant crown with an open contact and that patient just paid for it maybe a year ago. Those are expensive procedures for our patients. And so then are we responsible to close that contact? In which case, are we responsible to eat that lab bill, whether we're doing it chairside or not? Or is it the patient? Because we also know, especially if you do clear aligners and you do a lot of adult relapse cases, we know that teeth move and they're going to move throughout your whole life. So are we having these conversations ahead of time with our patients? Maybe the patient has some bone loss already and their teeth shift. Maybe they were post ortho and their teeth are still shifting. This might be a good opportunity to do a printed or a resin ceramic crown instead of a fired crown. Now, what's the difference between a resin ceramic versus a fired crown? A resin ceramic, you can bond composite to, and you can close that contact. So if I have a case where I think there might still be some movement, maybe there's some bone loss, maybe I'm just not sure about the contacts of something, this is where I might look at doing a resin ceramic where I can bond composite to it to change it. Do I print all of mine? I don't personally in my private practice. I still mill and we print. Is that changing? It is changing and it's kind of cool to see. It is a lot more affordable to print at this point. You still have a tie-based solution. But again, just pushing that envelope and thinking, why do we choose the material we do? Are we choosing it just because it's stronger? Do we always need that? And why do we follow these trends? What works best for us and our patient base? Just kind of get you thinking. If we are printing dentures, there's also a couple different ways to do it, printing or milled. Obviously, the one on the bottom is the milled denture that I showed before, but when we print, we can either print with our teeth and then print a different base. So we're printing two different things, then gluing them together. Or we can print one monolithic, meaning it's one material. So in this case, you would print a denture that looks white, and then you would paint in the pink gums. The monolithic ones tend to be a little bit more sturdy, heavier based. They don't break as much at this point versus the two layers can sometimes be a little bit more aesthetic. They can debond, but there's also some that have lasted a long time. Now, if I don't tell my patient that, or not even my patient, if I don't have that conversation with my team members and how we're going to process that, going back to just sharing the information, that can get really confusing too. Or if I have a team member that came from one office where they printed it all white and then they painted in the gums, but now in my office today, I want to print in two sets. I want to print my teeth and my base. All comes back to figuring out what you want to do in your office. And then again, just having that conversation with your team members. Write it down. What's your steps? And why are you choosing what you choose? I mentioned this earlier, another just exciting thing with printing. Before, when we were doing retainers or ortho aligners, or actually still today, how we would normally do it is we would print the model and then we would do vacuum form Essex retainers over that, whether it's a retainer or we're doing different Essex for the actual clear aligners if we're going to keep those in-house. But now we're starting to get to that point where they are being printed. So we don't have to do that model step. Just lots of advancements literally happening every day. So doctor's list isn't much different than the assistant list. Like, why are we changing what we do? Is it for our practice? Is it for our patients? What is that specific workflow? What are my responsibilities? And then how will I know if it's working? How can I learn more? I definitely say, how do I know if it's working? Track what you're doing, track your hourly, and know if it's making an impact on your practice, because that's how you're going to believe in the technology that you did. And if it's not working, then what can we do? How can we make that better? Do you have a mentor you can reach out to? What's working in your office? What's not? Complications, I mentioned this before, what can go wrong and how do I manage those complications? Think about that ahead of time. This is an example of printing on the left. What happens if you have a patient in the chair and you have a misprint? You will absolutely have a misprint if you print enough. A lot of times that's either some resin might have got on the glass and it smudged. Typically it's something not being clean. The resin wasn't stirred, something happened. Or, of course, if you have someone chair side, you have that pressure, and then that could be the one time that you're milling a bridge and it broke. So then is your patient going to sit in the chair? Do you have time or room for that patient to sit in the chair? Are you going to do a blue mousse so that you can have a temporary in case that happens? Some of that is just totally up to your practice and your comfort level, but think of those things ahead of time so that things will go a little bit more smooth. And then just get more reps. Show your team that you're invested and don't give up when you get through these complications, because they will definitely arise, and that's okay. We have complications in our life in general. So how can you use technology to enhance your current procedure mix? This is one of the things that I just absolutely get excited about. This would be an example of a patient that comes into my office and you look at this and you think, oh, this is a patient in his late 80s and he's getting ready for his granddaughter's wedding and he just wants a better smile. He doesn't love his teeth. Now it's easy to look at this and be like, oh, of course he needs ortho and he has this 100% overbite and all this stuff. And we go through ideal treatment options, but he just says, I just need my front teeth just to look a little better so I have a little bit more confidence in these pictures. What can you do? Well, we don't know if we want to do crowns yet, but of course we're going to look at all the scenarios, and you can see some old silvers with those gray teeth. And then of course the malocclusion, not only the malocclusion, but the misshape of the arch. And so we were able to print some wax ups to show him maybe what would be available on the restorative side since he didn't want ortho. And then we can also print these little snap-on smile trials, essentially, just kind of show him what we want. Now, it's a little harder when you have a lot of crowding. It's more an additive process, but you can still see the things that we talk about. So this is something that we kind of snapped on. You can do it in different shades because we wanted to know what shade. Now, is this something he's going to take home and use for party teeth? No. This is purely for communication, which is why I really love doing it. He had heard you do 6 crowns in the front, so he wanted to do 6 crowns. But what was fun about that, so we did choose the shade. He was a little canted because he was actually canted before, but seeing it in the trial smile, now we can adjust that cant a little bit more and have the conversation about it. But also he saw that he had those dark amalgams, and he self-added the 2 premolars to the plan. Big silver fillings, they needed crowns anyways, and he wanted to just brighten up that smile so that tooth didn't disappear. This is a really inexpensive way to communicate with our patients, and then we can deliver those crowns. Versus this is a patient that came in and she's a young patient and she wants a Hollywood smile. And she's already like an A1, B1 with this gorgeous smile. And the last thing I want to do is cut down these teeth for veneers because of this perception that she has. And so I want to have a lot of very detailed conversations. She came in and she said, I want this natural smile. So what can I do with our technology to help my communication with her? Hi, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Good. I hear we want to talk about a new smile.
I do.
What are we looking for?
So right now, I'm not liking my points on my canines.
Okay.
I would like to get rid of those. And then notice how my bigger teeth are like substantially larger than that one right there.
Okay.
So I want to like enlarge that a little bit and just get it more like full, get like a fuller smile.
Great. And do we want to keep it more natural or a little bit more Hollywood?
I believe I want to do more natural.
Okay. I always laugh, like everyone wants a natural smile, but you don't know what natural means to them. Natural might mean Hollywood to me, it might mean natural to them. Love using the scanner as a way to communicate. But then what I also do, because we already had a scan, is that I will have some prints ready to go to further communicate with her. So, and have you thought about how many teeth you want?
I've heard most people do 6. So what would you recommend?
Well, we're gonna look at your smile and how big you smile and then kind of go from there. So let me grab this mirror. So go ahead and just look in the mirror and give yourself a really big smile. And how many teeth do you normally see in that smile?
Probably 7 or 8. 8?
Yeah, 8.
Yeah.
Typically even numbers, so 8 or maybe even 10.
Yeah.
So the good news is we can try in some different options and then see. So I have these prints ready to go and I do them in 6, 8, and 10. It costs me about $2.50 to print this. Cost for the wax up if I send that out for design, or I can choose to do the design myself. Obviously it's cheaper if I do the design myself. And then I'm gonna characterize what I consider natural, meaning there's a gradation in the tooth. I'm adding some color for translucency and then adding a halo at the edge. This does not take a lot of time. My team members can do this, I can do this, but it's having that conversation ahead of time and communicating with the patient what our end goals are. This is what it looks like as I'm characterizing that snap of the smile. I'm adding a bit of resin and some color in there. This is the first time I did this, learning and the mod dentistry technique. They make it look so easy. I love characterizing porcelain. It was a little bit tougher than I expected it to be, but again, this is my first time now. Make it look a little bit better. What I see though versus what the patient sees is so different. So I want to show her what it looks like to have natural at the gum line. So I'm inking in some of the gingival warmth that most people have. And I'm doing it on only half so she can clearly see the difference inside. And then I'm going to paint in some of that blue for translucency. And that's going to go down at the inside of the edge. In that translucency. And then I normally create that translucency will give it a little bit of a layered look with a white edge. It's a little dramatic just so you could actually see the colors. Kind of looks like a 2-year-old did it, but again, I do the same pattern every time. And the more reps you do, the more natural you can make it. And then I print out, I have one of 6 teeth, one of 8 teeth, and one of 10 teeth, because I want her to see what that effect is going to look like. Okay, so we printed an example of what we think that smile could look like.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so 3D printed. They're a little bit brighter. We made everything a little bit more square. And this is if we did 10 teeth.
Okay.
Okay, so go ahead and just lean back for me. And then this literally just sits right on top and snaps in. All right, so now I'm going to give you a mirror. And this is if we were to do 10 teeth.
Oh, wow. That would probably be much better.
You like the more square?
Yeah.
Pretty crazy, huh?
So
and if you
crazy.
wanted to take this home and show anybody, you could literally, I'll hold the mirror for you, and you can literally take it out.
Oh, so easy.
And then put it back in. So not meant to eat, but literally just meant to kind of give you an example of what it could look like. So these can get very detailed and you can actually make them look super natural. For me, I'm looking at shade, I'm looking at size. I want to know if they want it all white versus half of it was painted. I love the term emotional prototype. I stole that from Dr. Tim Anderson, who's a dear friend and a printing guru, because that's what we're looking for. It's a prototype of what they are after and how we're going to meet those expectations. So this is what it looked like just snapped in. You can see it's not the most aesthetic thing on the planet, especially blown up. But again, it gives that patient the idea, how many teeth are we going to do? Is this how long you want them? Do you want that color in it or do you not? So that's what I like to do because I love that aesthetic side and I'm just using technology to add to what I currently do in my practice. And that's where we're going. Like the sky is the limit. So what do you want to add to your practice and how can you shape the technology around that? Do you want to add implants? Do you want to do full arch implants? Do you want to add clear aligners, night guards? Do you want to do more aesthetics where you mill it in-house? It's so exciting. And again, you have full control. You can send out your design or you can do your design. You can send out your manufacturing or you can do your manufacturing. There's no right answer. And it's amazing too to see how that evolution can change depending on the season of life that you're in and the season of dentistry that you're in. So to repeat our workflow, we scan, we design, we manufacture, we process, and then we deliver. Get your team involved. Don't forget, talk about scheduling. Where are you going to put the technology? How are you going to get your patients involved in that too? And create the culture around that. It's definitely not solo. And then commit to training. Luckily, there's so much content online these days, or in-person training if you prefer in-person training, and then start with home run cases. And when you get to those complications, just don't give up, just keep trying. Of course, if you want to do any live patient education, we'd love to have you here in Arizona. You can check us out at thepathway.com. We do a lot of surgical and restorative side and definitely use that technology in it. And you can see how it affects actual patients who really couldn't afford the treatment otherwise. And so you get a very special effect when you get to give back while also learning. Here is my contact information. Thank you guys for spending the last hour with me. You can email me, find me on Instagram. I am an open book. If there's anything that you have questions about or think about later, I love to geek out about digital dentistry. So thank you guys all for your time.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Dr. Odlin. That was so fascinating. And we can definitely sense your passion for this very exciting technology that is revolutionizing the industry. We'd love to open this up to questions and invite anyone who has any questions to please go ahead and type it into our Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. In the meantime, I have a couple of questions for you, Dr. Odland. How much are you using the printers and the milling machines? Are you using your printers every day or once in a while? And the same with the mills?
Yeah, it's pretty fun just to see how it's changed. Like when we first got into printing, that poor printer collected so much dust until now there's so many ways to use it. So our printer is normally going pretty nonstop and our assistants have been really in charge of that. We print a lot of models because we're right now doing bleach trays for our patients, or we do a lot of occlusal guards and surgical guides getting ready for surgery. So the printers are constantly going. And then the doctors are normally the ones that are hanging out with the mills and creating those same day crown services. And so luckily they get a lot of use. Down here, we have 6 full-time docs, and then I'll come in as well and see patients down here when we teach, and we have 12 mills, and it gets a little loud when all 12 of them are going at the same time, but you have printers and mills going, and it's just fun to see everything that you can create with your own hands.
Yeah, that's definitely fun. If you were starting out as a dentist today, would you choose a printer or a mill to create what you needed in-house for in-house procedures or restorations?
You know, I have been such a mill fanatic for so long because that's the only thing I had available back in 2006 when I graduated. And I love what I can do with a mill, but to see what you can do with a printer and you can get into it at such a lesser cost than milling. That barrier to entry is a lot less and it's so user friendly. If I had to choose one or the other, I would start with printing all day long today. And then knowing like if you get into it and say you want to start printing crowns, but you want to take it to the next level until that crown resin maybe shows up, okay, then you might start milling that instead and get into milling. I think they all complement each other and it's kind of a gateway. But I do think if I had to choose one today, if I was doing a startup, I think everyone should have a printer. And I think that's where most practices are going to go.
Yeah, it does seem like that. Well, it is the top of the hour now, and thank you for sharing your information here. We've got you for the audience. You have the various ways to reach Dr. Odland, either by email at chrisodlandmd@gmail.com, Dr. Odland's website, christineodland.com, her handle on Instagram at Dr. Chris Odland, and of course, titanium wine. That's so cool. Also,
That's just one wine. In case dentistry drives you to drink.
Exactly. Right. Okay, we do have a question actually that came in just in the nick of time. Longevity of printed and milled restorations based on your experience? What's the longevity of printed and milled restorations based on your experience?
So CEREC has been around for almost 40 years. So milled restorations, there's a lot more scientific data to that, and you can find that research very easily on PubMed. Whether you're looking at Emacs or zirconia milled restorations, that is how almost every crown is being manufactured today. So there, in my career, I very rarely have something break unless it's something that I did as far as under reducing or under prepping, maybe not respecting the materials. But milled has been around for a very, very long time. Very comfortable with that. Printed crowns are pretty new in the market. We've only been printing for the last couple years. I don't even know if it's been 2 years, so maybe even the last year. So I will tell you that there's a group of us that have definitely beta tested and tried to put things to the test. We've seen really exciting results, but as far as long term, I don't know yet. Have I broke them? I have, but again, it's because I ended up printing something really thin to see could I do it? But have I had some really good successes with it that I haven't had any changes to? I've seen that side too. So I'm excited to see where it goes. Super excited.
Yeah, a lot to be learned, and that's a very good question. Well, Dr. Odland, thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. And again, we did record tonight's webinar, and we will be emailing the recording out sometime in the next week. We'd also love to get your feedback via our survey that's going to pop up on your screens shortly. Thank you all again for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Odland, and we look forward to seeing you on future webinars.
Thank you. Have a great night.